In this video, you will learn how to create new text files via Python and how to add content to those text files. To create new text files, we use the open function. It's a built-in function, so you see I didn't import anything. The open function gets a file path as input and also the mode. These are the two most important arguments. The file path could be just a file name such as file1.txt. So a new file with this name will be created in the working directory. The working directory is the directory where the Python file is located. So a new file1.txt will be created in the same directory with main.py. Then the next argument is the mode. The mode could be either W or R for non-binary files, for text files. So in our case, it is W. If you were processing binary files such as PDF files, JPG files, etc., you'd use WB. But we are working on text files, CSV files, HTML files, and all the files that have text in them, and text only. So W, now this function returns a file object, so a specific Python file type, a file object, and you need to store that file object in a variable. So let's create a variable called file. So that will return a file object. In other words, we have created the file inside Python, and we can use the write method to write inside that file. What do we write? Well, text. And text is represented by strings in Python. So let's say first text. You write that, and you can write other lines if you like. You can apply that method as many times as you want. Second text, and so on. Once you are done writing the files, you want to close the file with file.close and then run. And you see that file1.txt was generated in my working directory. And this is the first string that we added, and this is the second string. So not very impressive perhaps, because you were expecting this to be something like this, I believe. Well, that didn't happen because this break line is also a character, and we didn't provide that character. So we just said, write that text, and then just after that, write the other text. So Python doesn't know that you want a break line. If you want a break line, you want to add \n. That means after first text, there will be a break line, and then comes whatever comes after. So run again. Now, if I run this file name will overwrite the existing file name if there is something. In other words, if this file path exists, it will be overwritten. So run this, and you see that now we do have this break line. If you want two break lines, you can add another \n, run. And now we see this blank line in here. Another way to write a block of code is to just delete these write methods and do content equals to a multi-line string. So with multi-line strings, you have these triple quotes in here and then triple quotes in here. And inside here, you can write text such as first text and then second text. Now you don't need to enter \n here, because in multi-line strings, the break line we did here is recognized. So for example, let's have this, or maybe two blank lines, and then apply file.write, and we write that string content. So this time we just pass the variable directly. Run, check, and we have 1, 2 empty lines. However, notice that we also have a break line here and also a break line here. So if you don't want them, you want to avoid the first break line. So you want to delete that and start directly after the quotes. And also here, put the quotes directly after the last text. Run again, and yeah, this is the output. no break line in the first line this time. Now, notice the file.close method. This is a method that will close the file for operations, and you cannot write any text after that. So let's say third text here. If we run this, we're going to get an error. It says operation on closed file. So this method basically controls the flow of operating with files. Now, there is a better method to do the writing of a file, the creation of a file. And that is by using a with context manager. With works like this. You say with open function, so you cut that, as file. So this is a new way to bind this variable with the output of this function. So we delete that. Now inside here, you apply file.write and you write wherever you like. You write it once, twice, how many times you need, and everything goes indented under the with line. So it's a block of code. And the benefit here is that you don't need this close method, because once the block is run, the file is closed automatically. So this is a recommended way to create and handle files. You don't need to use the close method. And normally you want to define the content outside this block. So first you have the content variable, you know what you want to write, and then you apply the write method and you say content there. And perhaps you need one more method or not in this case. So delete that as well, and that is the final code for this video. So run that and you should see that we've got this content. So that is the best way to write a new file in Python and add content to that file. In the next video, I'll show you how to read text files, which is very easy. See you there.